During the years of the PlayStation console, we would see many different styles of games come to light, with some that would achieve huge success, while others would definitely fall to the wayside. There was a lot of games that were also developed in conjunction with popularity from cartoon shows or movies of the time. But as we all know, that games that usually relate to anything with TV very, very rarely ever were considered good. There was always that issue with trying to transition the TV format over into like a physical media of some sort. Now with toys it was a totally different concept, but with video games for some reason there just was always a disconnect somewhat. They just never seemed to appeal to the masses, while the only way these games for the majority of time would sell would only be because of the name or the brand that was associated with the game itself. Because for example with this game Cubix, Robots for Everyone, racing robots, the only way this game would sell is for fans of the actual cartoon itself, but it wouldn't have sold in high numbers, which is very reflective of the reviews it got at the time when it released on the PlayStation in 2001. It was also added to the Nintendo Game Boy Color as well. That gives players the ability to play as many of the characters from the popular TV series of the time. We race around a variety of different tracks, all with the aim of stopping an evil antagonist from taking over the world. But the game does give access to a variety of different modes and features, so you can upgrade your vehicles to give them more attributes to help you win races, as it does become more difficult the further into the game you play. And you also do have additional modes with multiplayer aspects that you can play up to 4 players if you have a multi-tap accessory, which was definitely one of its best features. But even I will admit, from having spent time playing this game, there are better races on the PlayStation. I'm just going to admit that here and now. I think the one thing that catches on with this is the fact is that it is related to a TV show, and that's the only way that it would have really made any sort of sales. Because now I don't like to be negative around games, but it is a poor game. It's not very well executed, and you can see it with the reviews. It was often considered to be one of the worst racing games ever developed for the PlayStation, and considering this game came out in 2001, you would expect a lot more games to be of a better standard, a better quality. Now this game would have fared probably a lot better if it had been released back during the early months and years of the PlayStation itself, as games in early 3D aesthetics were marvel all on its own. So something really didn't have to be good for it to be playable, and people would have just loved the idea of playing these type of games anyway. But when we move forward 6 or 7 years, that all changed. As the standards had changed, people's perceptions and their level of expectation had changed. So when games like this were being released, it was never going to appeal and was never going to hit home. Like I said, if this game had been released in 1995, it could have been a different story. But I will agree with the reviews, because even spending time playing the game, it is clunky. The controls are very bad. You have to use the direction buttons in order to move the character and even to accelerate and pretty much brake and so forth, and that can throw you off, because especially with the camera, sometimes that the elements in the environments like houses or buildings can hinder your viewpoint, so you can't see where your character is. And also even when you're driving on, say, on a straight line, for some reason the game tends to glitch out and it can completely just throw you into a wall for whatever reason, even though you're not even holding the button to go into that direction. It seems to just do everything in its own way at its own time whenever it sees fit. And to make things worse, the enemies or the other characters on the screen can disappear as you're racing, but the problem you have is like you could be coming up to the finish line and then all of a sudden they'll respawn directly in front of you, so they can automatically win the race. And that doesn't make for a good quality game, because it means then that your entire victory is based around pure luck, because there's no guarantees where anybody's going to appear at any one time on the screen. And that's the one thing I found from playing it. Like, you could be near the finish line and all of a sudden someone will pop in just directly behind you or in front of you, and then you're like, all the hard work that you've done has actually been for nothing, because it's pointless. The game is so unbalanced that it doesn't even make it fair, or in this case even fun. Which, yes, I hate to really think of games like in that context, but unfortunately I can't lie about that. It's there, plain to be seen. If you sat down with the game and played it, you would actually see it for yourself, and I can understand the reason why it got so bad at reviews and why it didn't sell all that much. Yes, it does have some unique quirky elements with some of the visuals, while they're not considered great, but it's just it could have been a lot better, and considering that it was tied to a popular TV show from that time, it should have been a lot better. But there's just too many gripes and too many issues behind the features and the mechanics that just leaves it for a very frustrating and just very very weird and clunky experience, and for many you won't enjoy this at all. The only way this would be worthwhile having is if you were just adding it to your collection, if you were trying to gather all physical copies of PlayStation games, because the chances are a lot of people just probably won't play it. Now, it's not to say that it's unplayable, it is playable, but there's so much issues behind it and so many fiddly little nuances that it just won't make the experience enjoyable, which is why you'd be thinking to yourself, I'm not going to waste my time with this, I'm better to spend my time on something else, which is what will happen. Unfortunately, that's just the case. The PlayStation, like with other consoles of its time and even today, still have a tendency to produce games that are of a lot lower quality compared to many others out there, and unfortunately that's just the way that it is. There's no ifs or buts about it. They're there, once you see them you can't unsee them, but I suppose they have their own place. It is what you make of it at the end of the day. There'll be very few out there that would be willing to give it a chance, but there are some out there that might, and if you're one of those people, by all means give it a go. If not, you should be better to look elsewhere, as there are better games out there for the PlayStation, but I will leave that up to you. But regardless, whatever your thoughts are of this game, whether you like it or whether you don't like it, or did you even know if the game existed, I would love to know your thoughts, so be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you would like to see more content around other very obscure and unique, even quirky games, and even not so good games like this on the PlayStation, as yes, I will be covering them because that's the whole idea behind this channel, then you can check out the playlist here on screen to see a lot more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.